The daughter of a former boy wonder takes the mantle of the Bats. You should look at the brand new McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, the Batwoman. When Batman Terry McGinnis disappears after losing his memory and having his identity stolen by Falseface, Dick Grayson's daughter Elena tracks down the Batsuit and takes it for herself. Going against her father's wishes, she becomes Neo Gotham's newest superhero, but does her best to keep her identity a secret from him. Eventually, her father finds out, but it's too late. The city has a new protector, Batwoman. As we normally do, we're going to talk a little bit about Batwoman. But before that, as we normally do, I'm going to take my ruler and put it right to the very top of Batwoman's head. If we factor in the points that come out from the tops of her cowl, then the figure stands about 7.5 inches in height, or about 19 centimeters tall. Oh, and also, as we normally do, for some size comparisons, let's bring in the previously looked at Batman Beyond. Funny enough, it actually seems like Batwoman is taller than Batman Beyond's Terry McGinnis. This was also the one that had the mouth guard that you could either have gotten in this wave, or if you were foolish, you could have probably already bought this figure before, as it was also the variant to this one. This was the original Batman Beyond. Still my personal favorite. They all have very similar costumes, but you can see the one in the middle here, Batwoman, does have a slightly tweaked looking suit, a more elongated torso emblem, and also her eyes are quite drastically different than the McGinnis's on either side of her. Then something that we tend to do next in these reviews. Let's have a look at the figure's accessories. For Batwoman's accessories, even though I wouldn't consider it an accessory, the figure comes included with a trading card. Are we getting a little busy here when it comes to the trading card? I know this is supposed to be Batwoman's, but it seems like it's quite a crowded house. We already have all of these characters presented in their own trading card. And what was funny is the timing of which characters I looked at. If you go back and you look at the Batman Beyond, then you look at Shriek. Now you look at Batwoman. They have added one character, the previous characters before. It's almost like they're off to see the wizard, and Dorothy here is finding all of them along the way. I think the card is way too busy. I mean, again, if you're going to be calling this Batwoman's trading card, wouldn't the focal point, I get it, yeah, she's the largest thing here on the card, but wouldn't the focal point really be her and not all the other characters from this wave? It would be interesting to see Blight. Would he be Toto? Trying to think of what he would be in The Wizard of Oz. I would imagine his card is probably going to have all the 4 characters we've now looked at here on this one, and then just going to have Blight added on top of it. We'll see. We'll see. On the back of the card, though, the real name is Elena Grayson, and then there's a fairly simple to read read-up that you can either freeze the frame right now and read for yourself, or it happens to also be the same thing I read at the beginning of this video as well. I'm going to put that to the side. Quite a busy-looking card. Figure also comes included with a display stand. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the display stands because I know we bog down these videos so often with talking about the shape, talking about the color, talking about the sizzle of the DC logo down below. One thing I will tell you, though, is that the figure does use does need the display stand. I know right now it may seem like I'm just saying a fib, but believe you me, the figure has some real difficult times with her feet, and I would definitely encourage, when you do get this figure for yourself, make use of this display stand. Happens to have all these fingerprints all over it as well. Going to put that also to the side. I guess we can also tackle the Batman Futures and Build-A-Figure pieces, as Batwoman comes included with not 1, but 2 legs. I want to make sure, of course, I've got the legs facing the right way with the curve on the inside of the feet. That's what they look like. Pretty detailed looking legs, although again, no real paint happening anywhere here on the plastic. We can take the figure where we've left things off, sort of having just the lower half completely cut off, for the time being at least. And let's just plug the legs in place. There's one. And we'll do and rinse and repeat the same steps on the other side here. Just plug in the other leg. And that's almost pretty much a full figure. The only thing left to really still then do is when we do get ourselves Blight. Blight's going to come with these little kind of like tentacle arms that are going to go on the back of the torso, but kind of just to put things in perspective of how tall Futures and Batman is when you compare it like to a regular figure. Quite a longer, taller figure. I would say justify the reasons of making it a Build-A-Figure and not making just a Build-A-Figure the same size as a regular one. So at least I feel you get bang for your buck when it comes to the Build-A-Figure, Build-A-Figure bath. Although I think with the DC collectibles and DC Multiverse, it's the collect and connect figure. Bath is sort of delegated towards Marvel Legends. As for the rest of the accessories the figure comes included with, she comes with some batarangs. I wanted to just reach off to the camera, off where the camera isn't, and bring in the other batarang. This was the one that came included with Terry McGinnis. It seems to be the identical batarangs between the two. I can't, looking at the two, see any difference between the two. You see front and back, they are identical to one another. So it's good, actually, if you do happen to lose one. Not that I would be wishing you guys to be losing any accessories. But if you happen to lose one, at least you've got another one readily available. The batarangs can fit into her hands. I did do some swapsies, though. She figure also comes included with like these hands. Sort of more like clawing hands. These ones aren't really the best suitable for holding the batarang. You sort of have to have the batarang resting onto her thumb using these hands. But if you do swap out for the hands that I'm about to look at, these hands right here, these hands are a little bit closer in grip and actually do the better job of holding the batarang in her hand. I still feel like the hands are loose though, or at least they're too big of a grip to properly hold the batarang. Half the time I just feel like I'm balancing the batarang against her fingers. You bring it just far enough back and rest it between the pointer finger and the thumb. It seems to do the best job of keeping the batarang in place. And you can do the exact same thing on this side as well. Just kind of bring it around and rest it against the pointer and the thumb. Seems like we're doing a tutorial here. That looks like right now she's just carrying around tiny little luggage. You probably will want to pose her a little bit better than what I'm doing right now. But just for the sake of showing you guys, that's what it looks like with the batarangs in her hand. For the sake of also showing you guys, we're going to move over Batwoman here. And we're going to bring in the one that came, the Batman Beyond. It came with the visor over top of his mouth. I still am not as crazy about this one. I still like the look of the figure, but I like the mouth more visible, just because it reminds me of the cartoon. Why I am bringing him in right now so you can see the difference between the two. Batwoman's, first of all, her head is very different than what we got with Terry McGinnis. More elongated ears on the cowl, as well as eyes that for some reason remind me of Venom. Short of, again, the mouth not being present down below here, the eyes are certainly more drastically shaped than what we get here with Batman Beyond's Terry McGinnis. So there are changes definitely made there. Taking some cues also from Batgirl, you can see the way that she's got the hair coming out the bottom of the cowl, kind of changing things up. The emblem is also something that does get changed. It looks actually more closer to being Hordak's emblem than it does Batman Beyond's. It's much longer and it fits the full length of the torso and goes almost all the way down to her utility belt. Utility belt also is different between the two. This one also does have the shoulder pads. And yeah, you can see that there are some inspirations from one to the other, but there is definitely a lot of changes that have been made when it comes to Batwoman's outfit. That being said, we're going to move that one aside, and I couldn't help but notice while doing this, I was talking away and I happened to drop the hand. Let's just put in one of the other hands for the time being. There we go. Sometimes I do notice that these pegs, these hands, are always prone to falling off. If you've had similar issues, please let me know down below in the comment section. So yeah, the emblem is a little bit different. This one does also have shoulder pads on her shoulders, whereas the original Terry McGinnis Batman suit didn't have that. And yeah, the utility belt is also something that's a little bit different as well. She still sports the wings. The wings are a thinner red plastic that fold out. And just by, I think, the way that they've shaped the hair, it sort of has now resulted in the wings sort of curving inward. I'm going to see if I can straighten that out. I guess I could probably straighten it just a little bit by heating it up. And I don't know, maybe it wasn't the hair that was the culprit in all that. You can see really that the wings have been warped. Could have been just the way it was sitting inside the plastic tray. Like the Batman Beyond, you can also attach this to her arms. On the back of her arms, now you can actually do one of two things. I know this isn't really the proper way, but you can also take one of the little spikes that stick out from her gauntlet and sort of use that as a makeshift slotted place to fill in or slot in to the back of her wing if you want to have her arms extended this way. The real proper way of doing it, though, is if you look on the back of the arm, there's one standalone little hook here that also hooks onto the side. And attaches just onto the back here. This gives you a much more secure grip than what I just finished doing. But yeah, again, you can take this one and just find, there's the slot right there, and just put it in that opening there. And that at least looks like the wings are part of her arms and not as a separate appliance. Still, though, downside to this figure, like the Batman Beyond we looked at before, it doesn't have a flight stand. Strange that he doesn't, this one, she, doesn't come included with a flight stand. Instead, sort of just relegated to a regular standard stand that they include with all the Multiverse figures. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and take the arms, just detach those from the wings, and then carefully folding them in Disappointed that they are warped, yes, but I'm not even sure if I'm going to probably display her anyways with the wings extended out. I kind of like the idea of it draping more down like a cape. And maybe I'll just kind of bring these out just a little bit so they don't have the points sticking on either side. Now, as for the rest of the body, it's basically just the black molded plastic. If you're looking for paint, you're really not going to find it here with the figure, other than the eyes, other than the emblem, and other than the utility belt. All the rest of it seems to be just kept to the black molded plastic. It is nice. It's a little more sleeker of a design of the same looking suit. It does have, where there's paint unfortunately left off, at least makes up for it with some additional sculpting here in the legs, in the arms, and especially in the torso as well. I really like how the way the emblem is raised. Whether it looks like Hordak or not, the Horde, the evil Horde, I still like the way that it's actually raised and not just painted on top of the suit. As for the figure's articulation, starting first with her head sculpt, you can probably already imagine that because she has the longer hair, it's going to wreak a bit havoc when it comes to moving the figure's head. I find up and down is not so much the issue, but certainly moving it back and forth, you kind of have to bring the head further forward to be able to swing it back and forth this way. If you have it back, then of course it's going to be clipping against the shoulders, and that's not good for anybody. As for the arms quite comfortably come out at a full 90-degree angle bend. You can take then those same arms and you can rotate them all the way around. You could do this until the cows come home. I'm not going to do that until the cows come home. Do you actually live in a place right now where you wait to have the cows come home? Let me know down below in the comments section. So strange to be asking that. Swivel on the bicep. One thing you may also notice as I'm swiveling away here is that the shoulder is actually attached to the bicep. It's not attached to this part of the shoulder's arm. The figure does have a double hinge on the elbows. That's nice to see. The figure has also a swivel in the hands. You can rotate those back and forth and also hinge them back and forth this way. As for the upper torso is on a ball joint. One thing that is clever, at least, is that they've kept this part of the emblem attached to the top of the torso and not attached it down below. It results in a bit of a lip of plastic, but I would rather that than have no articulation in the upper torso. The figure also has the same articulation point lower down here right by the utility belt. Legs split out. Once again, ratchet joints on this. Now, I have already noticed here, this is something I want to draw your attention to. Because the figures are using these lower soft plastic, some people have already coined the term figure diapers. I have one issue with this leg, that it always gets caught. Can you see that right there? The top of the thigh is always prone, on this side at least, to getting caught against the plastic. And as I'm bringing this in, I'm going to have to get myself like a screwdriver or something. Or maybe, you know what? I've got myself a sword here. You know, just a random sword. Whenever I just happen to need a sword, you know. See if I can fish the plastic out just a little bit. I might even have to take myself a screwdriver. This leg isn't so bad. This leg can easily do a split spine out and forward and back. But this leg right here is getting caught against the plastic. I just don't want to warp this part of it. I'm going to see if I can fish that out a little bit later on. Legs again move forward and also move back. There's a slight swivel at the top of the thigh. Double hinge on the knee. And then when it comes to Batwoman's lower legs, she doesn't have anything here because this is all just sculpted together as plastic. But she does have foot articulation. Yes, Batwoman's feet. As for her feet, while they do walk back and forth this way, and you can also ankle pivot them, and there's also toe articulation, that's fine and good. I'm not crazy about the shape of the foot. Batman Beyond's was completely level and flat. This one, unfortunately, curves back a bit. It actually seems like the heel sticks a little further down. See how it's not completely flat? So I'm running my finger along it. And then this toe doesn't sit flat either. So I find I have a real tough time, going back to the point I mentioned earlier about using that display stand. I have a real tough time when it gets the figure standing. Just bring her cape around here a little bit. I sort of having to warp the look of her feet, almost as if she's broken her ankles, just to get the figure to actually properly stand. If you look at that, and aesthetically it doesn't look pleasing, and you go in there and try to straighten out the feet and make them flat, then the figure's going to just topple forward. The figure just doesn't have, I think, the properly sculpted feet. Or it's almost as if like the peg point is too high up, where you can't actually straighten the front of the toes. Either way, though, it's going to make her legs look, or at least her lower feet, look a little wonky. But that seems to be the only way I've actually managed to be able to get Batwoman to stand properly. Anything outside of that, and like I said, the figure does have some stability issues. Going back again to the point I mentioned earlier, make use of the display stands. After all, that's why they're there. For those who have watched so far these Batman Future End reviews, thank you for that, by the way. You may have noticed that we have now split the restaurant bill completely in half. What I mean by that was my clever way of saying that the 4 figures that make up this wave are split right down the middle, that the first 2 figures were rehashing of figures that we already got before. The visor plate Batman Beyond literally was just the same figure packaged into this wave with the included accessories needed to build Future End Batman. A bit of a bummer, again, if you already picked up the visor or the mouth guard Batman Beyond variant, then you're essentially getting the figure again. I know I already said that before. The Shriek, again, is just repackaged with a different head sculpt, so that's good at least, because we're getting the better, what I feel to be the better Shriek of the 2. Now, the other half of the restaurant bill is getting brand new figures. Now, these figures are exclusive to this wave. So like Batwoman, for example, and Blight, 2 figures that, as far as I know, have not been released in any other way, shape, or form. So that's good. At least that's some positive point, splitting it right down the restaurant bill. Funny enough, though, the first 2 figures I've had a look at, while I've been sort of lukewarm about the idea of getting another Terry McGinnis Batman Beyond, at least I like the look of that figure. I'm kind of less excited, to be honest, about Batwoman. Of the 4 figures, the one I was the most interested in was Blight. Second to that, even though we already got that figure before, was the helmeted Shriek. I think if I was just to be going out and not... If this figure, for example... I'm just going to pull myself away from what I was originally going to say. If this figure was pulled out of this wave and it wasn't crucial in order to build Future End's Batman, I probably wouldn't have picked up Batwoman. I'm from the school and consider it old school. I'm sure somebody's going to be yelling at the back of the crowd here. I like myself having Batman being the sole person to carry the cowl. And especially when it comes to Bat families or Spider-Man's families, it seems after a while everybody has donned the cowl or the costume, and it sort of dilutes the character. I get the idea. It's fun to bring in a Batwoman. We have had Batwoman in the past Golden Age and Silver Age comics, but to be bringing one in again for Batman Beyond, I mean, it's literally a female version. Different character, yes, but it's a female version of Batman Beyond. And while I can get behind the idea of sharing around it, I would be more interested if they had just given her a completely different name. Now, based on certainly her backstory of taking the suit, we couldn't have called her a different character. But even though, like, the figure is different in the sense that you get a more sleeker, slimmer looking Batman Beyond, at the end of the day, it's still female Batman Beyond. I'm just not as crazy about the idea of somebody else taking up the mantle. It's an interesting, at least, backstory, incorporating that it's tied into Dick Grayson, but I still would have preferred just Terry McGinnis on his own. Now, that's my own personal opinion. When it certainly comes for the figure is interesting enough. Still looking at that head sculpt, I feel like I'm looking at Venom. The only thing that's missing there is the fact it doesn't have the big giant smile. The costume, at least, is different enough, so it doesn't feel like I'm just looking at Terry McGinnis's costume on a slender-looking frame. She does also have the hair that sticks out the back, which is very reminiscent of, Batgirl. And then she comes essentially with the same bat shurikens that came included also with Batman, those batarangs. For me, again, if this figure was released on its own and not packaged along with the rest of this wave for Batman Future's End, probably I would have not picked up the figure. For whatever feelings you have about the way the character looks, I'm just not crazy about the idea of having just someone that's sitting on the shelf that already looks like Batman Beyond, but it's just a different person underneath. It doesn't really matter whether it's a female or not. It could be any person underneath the cowl. I'm just not a big fan of somebody else inheriting the cowl, when for me it's Terry McGinnis in the future and it's Bruce Wayne in the past. You guys agree? You guys disagree? Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of the idea of somebody else inheriting the mantle of a superhero. You like the idea? Do you dislike the idea? And by the way, actually, while I am asking you guys, the viewers, that question, one thing that also, again, problem with this figure, if you are picking it for yourself, just be careful of the plastic diaper skirting. Again, where the top of the thigh tucks into. I had to take myself a bit of a screwdriver and just fish that leg out. But it's gonna give me problems again a little bit later on. The wings are warped. And again, the big problem with the lower of the feet. The feet aren't completely flat, and the way that they pegged in the toe area just doesn't work well for a figure like this to be standing properly. So yes, you will have to make use of a display stand. At least, if anything, the display stand helps to give you guys the option of displaying it in a much more interesting pose than just the vanilla pose of having her standing straight. I just talked a whole lot here in final looks. But again, your video question for today, going back a little bit, how do you guys feel about the idea of somebody else taking up the mantle of a superhero? Do you like the idea? Or if you think, possibly even like myself, if you're going to introduce a character that's similar and connected to that original superhero, give them a different name. I know, to be fair, this one's called Batwoman. It's not Batman Beyond, but still, Let me know down below in the comments section how you guys feel about someone else picking up the mantle for a superhero. Also, if you are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn on the bell notification, and keep peepers peeled at all times while we have wrapped up things for an alright Batwoman. The review of what I feel to be a much more enticing, interesting Blight will be right around the corner. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.